Hello everyone, I'm Laurel Griffith and welcome to Sunday School. Today we will turn our attention to Jacob, who is the grandson of Abraham. We will be in Genesis chapter 28 and we'll be looking at verses 10 we're going to look through 10 through 22 today. But before we look at our focal passage, let's just do a quick review to remember how God has been working up until this point. So we see all the way back in Genesis chapter 12 that God reached down into human history and called one man, Abraham, to make a covenant with him. It was a covenant where God said, I will be your God. You will follow me, obey me, and I will make of you a great family and a great nation, and through you all the nations of the world will be blessed. I will give you the land. I will protect you and provide for you. So God is promising Abraham blessing for himself, for his family. The family will become a nation, and then that nation will turn around and bless all the nations of the world. So God has worked through Abraham, who was faithful, and his faith was counted to him as righteousness. Now we know that Abraham had some missteps along the way, but Abraham was attentive to God. He heard God's voice and he followed God. We saw last week where Abraham's son, the son of the promise, Isaac, was protected by God, and Isaac and his family came to Canaan, and established their home in Beersheba. In last week's lesson, we saw how God even turned the heart of the king of the Philistines to create a covenant of peace between the king and Isaac's family. And so God was actively involved in the life of Isaac, his family, in creating a place where they could grow and thrive. They could fulfill God's command to be fruitful and multiply. And God had brought them into the land. So today we pick up with the story of Abraham's grandson, Isaac's son, Jacob. And Jacob, as we encounter him, is in a mess, and he is a bit of a mess. So let's go back and review what we know about Jacob. These are probably familiar stories to you. You might go back and choose to read the chapters prior, right before chapter 28, and you'll get the whole account, but I'm going to try to give it to you in a nutshell. We know that Isaac and Rebekah have two sons, and those sons are Esau and Jacob. They come as twins, and even in the womb, Rebekah knew that there was tension between these two. Esau is born first, and the narrator tells us that Jacob comes out of the womb holding on to Esau's heel. And the idea here is that he is trying to replace Esau or to get ahead of Esau. There's tension already between these two boys, even before even as they are being born, it seems. And this holds true throughout this early part of their lives and this part of the story. We see that Esau is the firstborn, and so by rights, Esau would have had the birthright given to him by his father. We see that Jacob schemes with his mother to try to trick Esau. So there's several instances where we see Jacob's character is revealed. He's a schemer, he's a trickster, he's a deceiver. And so this results in a great deal of tension, as you might imagine, in a home and family. God has chosen, though, and this is an important thing for us to recognize, that even with Jacob's poor character, and even with the conflict that is coming in the home because of the decisions that Jacob has been making along the way, God has chosen to work through Jacob. It is through Jacob's lineage that this family will continue to grow, to develop, and to flourish, so that the nation can be formed, and the nations then will be a nation that will turn around and bless the nations of the world. So God has said Jacob is the one that I am going to use, in spite of Jacob's character and in spite of the mess that Jacob is making of his family. So where we are today, Jacob has stolen Esau's birthright, and Esau is angry, and their mother has come to Jacob and has said, Rebekah has said to Jacob, you need to get out of town because Esau is after you. And go to my brother's uncle's house in Haran, and you'll be safe there. And while you're there, get a wife. And so that is exactly what Jacob does. He heads out. Now, it's important to realize that this is the place where Abraham originated. Abraham came from this place. So Jacob, it looks like Jacob is going the wrong direction, right? God has brought this family into the land. But because of Jacob's deceit, because of the trouble that he is causing, he is being forced to leave the land. So to the reader who would have read this story for the first time, what they would have realized is that this seems to be going backwards. That God has said, I'm bringing you into the land, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to give you this family. But here we have, because of the character of Jacob, it seems that this is actually in reverse, and it would look as though it's going to thwart the plan that God had had. So Jacob is on the run. He's got to cover about 550 miles to get from Beersheba, which is at the southern end of Canaan, to Haran. About 550 miles. It'll take him at least more than a month, maybe much longer, depending on how diligent he is in his walking. He is alone and he is penniless. He is all by himself. He has nothing with him as he makes this journey. He travels a few days, and it says that our focal passage picks up where he stops to rest for the night in a place that he will later call Bethel. And this is where he has that dream that we're also familiar with, Jacob's ladder. So let's take a look at our focal passage today and see what God can teach us here as we look at this through the eyes of Jacob. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamed that there was a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reaching to heaven, and the angels were ascending and descending on it. And the Lord stood beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. And your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. And you shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and your offspring. Know that I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So this is that amazing dream. Now, first of all, your scripture, your translation may say ladder or stairway. The Hebrew word can be translated either way. Many scholars believe that what Jacob is seeing is this image that was common in the area of Canaan, and it would have been a stairway that was constructed next to a pyramid. And on top of the pyramid would have been a flat place where the people would have offered sacrifices to these idols, to these gods that they believed in. And the god would have then come down that stairway into the temple to receive the sacrifice. This is what the people believed. So this architecture was common in this place, and it was the god who would have been making the journey up and down the stairs, the idol that they were worshiping. Where Jacob sees is a similar staircase or ladder that is between heaven, the portal to where God would be, to earth. But he does not see the one true God moving up and down the ladder. He sees the one true God standing at the entry point to heaven, and he sees angels moving up and down the ladder. And the angels are the messengers. God is sending the angels out into the world to do his bidding, and then the angels are coming back and more angels are leaving. And so it is the idea that the angels are moving back and forth, obeying God or at God's command, but God is the one who is standing at the portal to heaven, and he is speaking his words to Jacob. Now, what does he tell Jacob? The first thing that we recognize is that God is reassuring Jacob that he will be with him, that he's going to take care of him, that he will protect him. And so these are words that must have come as some consolation and comfort to Jacob as he is setting off on this journey. And it makes you wonder, did Jacob realize that he did not deserve any of this? Was Jacob self-aware enough to know that he had caused his own pain? I don't know the answer to that, but it would be something interesting to think about. Did Jacob recognize that he did not deserve this grace that God was extending to him in this moment? But God not only assures him of his protection and his presence, God reaffirms the covenant that he has made with Abraham, the covenant that he has affirmed again with Isaac, and now he's doing the same thing with Jacob. And he says, I am going to make you a nation, a great nation, and through you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And I am going to bring you back into this land. So, one way to think about this is Jacob's sin is sending him away from the land. And God is going to allow this to happen. God is going to work through these circumstances. But God is not finished with Jacob, and he is going to bring Jacob back to the land the land that he has promised. He wants Jacob and Jacob's family to be in the land. And so this is God's covenant. This is God's commitment. This is God's promise to Jacob. And it is independent of who Jacob is at this moment. Now, if we were to read the story of Jacob's life, we would see that Jacob does grow in his faith and in his understanding of who God is. But right here at this moment where God has chosen to speak to Jacob and to work through Jacob, we have to recognize that Jacob is not a hero. Jacob is a deceiver, and he is on the run because of what he has done himself. And so we recognize here that God is choosing to be faithful to the covenant, and he is choosing to work with someone who is they have not come to a place of spiritual maturity. God has reached down to them in the middle of their sin, in the middle of their lack of spiritual awareness, to commit himself to them, to invite them into a deeper understanding and a deeper relationship as they make this journey where they're going to walk together now, because God is with Jacob all the way to Haran, and all of the events it'll be 20 years, more than 20 years, before Jacob makes it back home. So let's see Jacob's response. So we read that Jacob says that the Lord is in this place, that surely the Lord is in this place. And when Jacob uses the word Lord, he is using the name of God. So he is referring to a specific God, not the gods of the Canaanites. He is the word that's translated Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D in your scripture is the proper name of God, Yahweh, the personal name of God, Yahweh. So Jacob is identifying God as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, his father, and now he's saying this is my God, and this is now the house of God. So Jacob has some spiritual awakening in this moment when God reveals himself, and he says, and this is the gate of heaven. And he's talking about the portal, that where he has seen this ladder or this stairway come down, that this is the gate of heaven. I am encountering God here. So we see now what Jacob does. So Jacob has this awareness, but in the morning he has another response. So let's look at verse 18. So Jacob rose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I should go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I may come to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you. So Jacob has two responses to this dream that he has had the night before. When he awakes, He takes the stone that he has placed his head upon at night and sets it upright and turns it into a pillar and a kind of altar. He anoints it with oil. So it is an indication that this is a place where he has encountered God, a place, the portal of where he has seen the Lord or heard the voice of the Lord. And then he also makes an oath. And what he says is interesting. If you take a look at it the first time you read it, you may think that this is just a great testimony of Jacob's faith, where he says that he is going to follow God, and he is going to bring God a tenth of all that God blesses him with back as an offering to him. But notice that there is a condition to this oath. For Jacob says, if the Lord does these things for me, if the Lord provides for me, if the Lord goes with me, if the Lord protects me, if the Lord secures me, if the Lord blesses me and brings me back to my father's house, then I will make this offering to the Lord. Now, there are two schools of thought on Jacob's response. Some scholars believe that Jacob is just expressing that he is confident that God is going to do this for him, and so this is a faithful response of worship to God, that we can see that Jacob has grown spiritually because he has had this encounter with God. The other response of scholars, and I kind of think this is the way I think about this, is that Jacob has grown. He has certainly now more aware of God, but he still is in this place of transactional faith. What he is saying is, God, if you hold up your end of the bargain and you give me the things that I am going to need to be successful, then I will then serve you. And so it's this transactional relationship that Jacob has with the Lord at this point. Whichever of these you believe, whichever position you believe on Jacob's response, you do see that Jacob is now aware of God. God has gotten his attention. God has revealed himself, and Jacob's spiritual journey has begun. He has begun now to be aware of God and will be aware of God's presence as he makes this journey, and then has this time with his family in Haran, where he will find a wife, and he gets into all kinds of trouble there and on his way back home. But he will know that God is with him throughout this journey. What can we learn from this story? First of all, I think what we need to be sure of is that we recognize that Jacob is not the hero of the story, but neither is Abraham, and neither is Isaac, and neither are Noah. These beautiful stories of faith, where we see the Old Testament characters, what we have to recognize is that the stories, the biblical narrative, is not to highlight the individual that God has spoken to or God has engaged with as our ideal or as someone we are to emulate, but rather the story is about God. God is choosing to use human beings. Remember when we were looking at Noah, we said that God will work through one surrendered person. God will work through people who are available to him. And these are the people that God has chosen to work through. And we learn about God's design for his plan of redemption through these stories, but we also learn about the character of God. We learn about his goodness. We learn about his mercy. We learn about his faithfulness. We learn that he is going to keep his promise and that he is going to work through circumstances. And even when these circumstances are not what he would have designed or desire, he is still committed to bring about his great redemptive purposes. And this is where our hearts should be lifted, and our worship should be given to God, because we see who he is through these stories. We can see ourselves in these people. I can see myself in Jacob. His desire to have things his own way, his desire to maneuver himself. I mean, Jacob is all of us in the times in our lives when we long to take control. But what we can understand is that God is the one who has reached down into history and is working with people, and here's the beautiful part, just as they are. God does not wait on Jacob to come to a better place. God does not wait on Jacob to become spiritually mature. God doesn't wait on Jacob to clean up his act. God says, I'm going to reach down, I'm going to reveal myself to Jacob, and I am going to work with him and bring him to the place where I can bless him and bless his family. That's what God does with us. That's what God did in Jesus Christ. God did not wait on the world to deserve Jesus. We would never have reached that place. God sent Jesus to us when we were trapped in our sin and our darkness, and it was Jesus that came to free us and to set us free. And even as Christians, we recognize that God longs to have a relationship with us. God longs to use us, and He's not waiting on us to be perfect. He's not waiting on us to have some kind of self-improvement project before He works in our lives and uses us to accomplish His purposes. God is faithful, and God meets us exactly where we are, not because of who we are, but because of who He is. So in your classes this week, what a great thing to talk about. How has God reached down into your life and worked in you and through you? How do you see this principle at work within yourself, within perhaps your Sunday school class, and even the life of our church? Have there been times when God has called you into something and you recognized you were not really prepared, you were not necessarily, you didn't feel worthy, but God says, I want to use you. And what is your testimony about who God is and His faithfulness to you? Well, I hope you have a great class. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to being with you again soon. God bless you all.